Curriculum Committee. I'd like to welcome everybody. Viewers may watch live board committee meetings online at tcaps.net/board. Recorded meetings may be viewed on demand at the same address. So we will move into public comment. I'm guessing no public comment. No? Okay. Moving on, the first procedural item, we're at the draft meeting minutes. Are there any changes?
No.
Okay, those meeting minutes will remain as posted. Moving on to the TCAPS district course catalog for 24-25. We'll defer to Heidi.
Great, so for new courses, we always know they come in August, so this is for the 24-25 district course catalog. We have one edition of aviation maintenance, which is an additional offering at CTC. And then an adjustment to add middle school advisory to the course description or district course catalog.
Okay.
I expect you will see more coming when students do their enrollment in NMC. So if we have any additional variation in classes, those will be added as they come in.
Okay, and the middle school advisory is, what is that again? It's just,
So-
it was there, it's just being added?
It was not in the district course catalog, and the auditors requested that it needs to be in there actually to be counted as part of our seat time.
Instructional time.
Got it. Okay, I get it. Okay, perfect. Okay, so we'll move those to the consent calendar, if the committee agrees, okay? And then, what is this? So, the parent, 2024 student parent elementary handbook and the 24-25 student parent secondary handbook. We'll defer to Kristen Moore.
So kudos to Kelly Walter, who has been tirelessly working to bring all of our handbooks into a Google Doc form, which just makes it so much simpler to do revisions. The revisions that have been made are very minimal, really just are kind of nuances to all of the same kind of regulations that have been in place. Those have been reviewed by elementary and high school and middle school principals. We still have board policy numbers and references throughout the handbooks that are aligned with our current policies. When and if there has been any change in policy, we'll go ahead and revise those as they come. And the goal is to have them all available for full approval after August 12th.
I was going through the handbook a little bit. I didn't get all the way through the high school, secondary. But the elementary one, there were just little areas that I thought were kind of, I flagged with questions. And so, for instance, in the Media Library Center, it says parents are welcome to use the Media Library Center as a resource. And I'm not quite sure what that would mean.
What that means?
What that would mean. So if I use it as a resource, I think I have access to the collection. You know, and if I have access to the collection, do I have to go there and I can't check things out, so I have to sit there? Do I have to make an appointment? I just thought that was a little bit open-ended,
Well-
especially with the lockdown.
Yeah, you always have to make an appointment from that standpoint. So, and as far as a resource, that is generally up to the building principal on if a parent, they would check it out through their child. You know, they don't have a direct access to be able to check it out themselves.
Right,
Um,
well.
you know, from that element, but they could through their child, so it's a resource for their child.
Okay,
So from that element.
So for example, if I'm a parent that wants to be able to read to my kids at home, and I know my kids are really into sharks, and I wanna check out some shark books, and I maybe don't have the financial resources to go purchase them, we would allow a parent to check out books to read to their kids through the library,
Under their child's name.
under their child's name. Yeah.
And they still would have to go to the office and get a visitor's pass
All of that.
after, yeah.
It just seemed kind of weird, so if the parent then said, I wanna see everything you have in a certain topic, they can have their child begin to selectively pull that out and review that.
But they're gonna have to have the time, and it'll be outside of the curriculum time area that they're gonna do that.
Oh, okay. So, I don't know if that has ever been
No,
something I would.
I've never had an issue in 5 years with it.
Then on field trips, donations to fund the field trip experience may be requested but are not required for student participation.
Correct.
Some of our field trips are going abroad. Does that mean, as written, that if you're not able to have the resources to go, that you still can just go?
At the elementary level, we do not have any field trips that would be abroad. Probably our biggest field trip we would take would be to Mackinac Island. I do think you raise a good point about equity related to field trips, and that is really what that clause is pertaining to. So if we think that this is a field trip is very much a part of like the school day. It's something that's taking place during school hours. We're gonna go to the sand dunes on a Tuesday. Those trips should be accessible to all students, regardless of cost. If you're talking about the kinds of trips that are taken outside of the school day, like going, yes, those are things that are often have to be financed both either through fundraising or parent. And those are not field trips, those are sort of extracurricular activities that we provide opportunities for kids to do.
I know that on the board, we've always just approved them. We've always just felt, but I'm wondering if that would ever be an issue. Maybe because
Well,
it said
I think-
people exclude themselves.
So I think a couple of things, like I know we just approved the trip, I wanna say to Japan, and it's like 2 years out. And the reason is because that particular teacher has so many fundraising opportunities available to offset the cost for the kids, that they wanna start fundraising sooner than later, so they can help to fund a lot of those trips. I know like a lot of the choir trips, like I've donated to students personally who have, done their own fundraising, almost like a vertical raise for sports. They do the same thing for field trips, for kids, that probably can't afford, that. And I think, it is something we've talked about scholarship wise, especially for like 5th grade Mackinac Island and things like that, to try to help with the equity piece. I don't know, how to, if that's like a handbook issue, I don't know.
It's just a question.
Yeah.
It's just the way I was reading it, and I was thinking, will that ever be an issue?
I think, so I don't know well enough, between the elementary and secondary, is the language different?
You know what, I'm not sure.
So I think that's something for us to look at. So from an elementary standpoint, we don't do a trip that would be outside at the elementary level. Secondary level, I think you bring up a good point of semantics, first of all, of a field trip that is a part of the curriculum and a field trip that is co-curricular, or extracurricular rather.
Right.
In the way, it's a club that's doing something from that standpoint. So I think, we can take a look at that. I will tell you, I wish I had a better answer for the financial aspect of our extracurricular field trips.
Sure.
It's one of those that, I look at the Washington DC trip that's done all the time, and I just know there's kids that can't go on that because they can't afford it. And it bothers the heck out of me. I just haven't, from a financial resource, figured that out yet of how to do that. To make it to where any kid that wanted to go could. And open to ideas and thoughts, definitely. I think a lot of our folks do, I think of the trip to Mexico, the service learning trip, and
Yeah.
like that, they do a ton of fundraising
Or
and a
to
ton of
Italy.
opportunity for kids, but there's some that quite honestly does bother me, that we have that inequity, and
Or going to New York.
yeah,
The
Right.
New York trip is a good trip.
It is, but again, if you don't have the financial means, it's really, really hard. And I think for some that, there's some that go a super extra mile for fundraisers to make it to where a kid that can, but even then, it's still, if you're trying to sell, Christmas cookies or whatever, and if you don't have a family here, whatever, that can afford to buy Christmas cookies, you're kind of left out still, and so, Beth, I wish I had a good answer for that one, and it's something that I'm happy to sit and continue to talk and explore, that I would love to be able to do more in that area. But to the point here, I think putting some elements to that for the secondary especially is probably important for us to identify if it isn't articulated already.
Okay. And thoughts on food. The whole issue with the charges. And I was reading through in the, the administrative rules. And it said if a kid brings their lunch, we'll charge for juice and milk. Whereas if a kid takes a lunch, a free lunch, they're not charged for those
And that's all,
things.
that's federal USDA guidelines,
Yeah.
that you have to take a whole lunch. We cannot give just a portion of it up.
And see, that just seems so unfair.
I agree. I would,
Especially because,
if you want something to talk to your congressman and your US senator on,
My feeling
that's-
is they've
that's a
already
piece.
been kind of.
we are not allowed to give a
2
partial
weeks.
meal out. They have to take the whole meal for us to be able to give that. Otherwise, we are not able to use, the reimbursement that we get for any of that if we don't do that.
And even with food allergies is an issue.
Yeah.
I think they've overreached.
And we have food allergy, so our kids are identified and we
Right.
have alternative, even gluten, we have those alternatives for kids to be able to have that, but you have to take the whole thing or nothing.
Okay.
Had this conversation a few times.
So that kind of thing, with the free and reduced, I think
Yeah.
kind of that's a snarl. And there were a couple of other areas. Immunization requirements. Under the waivers, if the parent waives having their child immunized, it says parents of students that have waivers on file must realize that in the event of an outbreak of any disease that would be protected by immunizations, their students will be prevented from attending class during the incubation period of the disease. My question is, are the parents and the students notified every time there's a potential outbreak?
Yes,
In the school.
if there is, if it's a license, yes, our nurses, actually have a letter that
Well,
they do and they send it.
The lice wouldn't be the immunization.
No,
thing,
but if we have any kind of thing like that falls under we
Measles,
converse with the health
mumps,
department. The health
rubella.
department usually, because we report it, they identify it generally even before we do, because they're seeing referrals from physicians, those things. So when we get a notification that they're seeing that and open an investigation, then we're notified and we talk with the health officer and they make a recommendation to their nurses, and even generally comes to me to send a letter out, of a classroom breakout or a building
And you
breakout.
just do that generally across the board?
Yeah, in that building.
Okay.
Yep, so, if we have a situation in a building or even just a classroom, we see it sometimes like with chicken pox and things in the elementary level, generally, or preschool level is where we probably see that more often than not. And so we do send a letter, or we've even just closed classrooms down
But
based on those
It's
situations.
a general information, and then the parent understands
Correct.
that they should keep their child at home
Correct.
because of the
That is
coverage
correct.
issue. Okay, and then there were just a couple other issues, sorry, one of them was, with LEAP, it says in here that regardless of gender, students will be permitted to compete in all athletic activities in the event that only a girls or a boys team is offered.
Mhm.
So that's pretty clear up front. But I guess my question is, does TCAPS equitably distribute funds against both girls' athletics and boys' athletics?
Well, I will tell you, for the most part, yes, we've had a few things that we've identified over the last year. That was some uniform things, Eric can tell you. That we have resolved from that standpoint. we had a situation of some hand-me-down uniforms and things, and one gender wasn't right, so we bought all new uniforms in that aspect. So if there's ever anything I'm made aware of, for sure, we correct it, if there is. But for the most part, we generally try. So if one has a coach, the other has a coach, those kind of things from that
Okay.
standpoint.
Good. So, because I think that that's one of the things that initially inspired all the Title IX business.
With 4 daughters in the district, I generally get a pretty good idea.
Well, I'm glad.
And there's been some unusual, but we never had girls wrestling, and we don't have girls wrestling. Girls are a part of wrestling now, but that, and same thing, girls that are
But it's
playing
expanding.
football, same thing, where we're, so we are changing, and so, but again, the issue with the uniforms was brought to my attention by a parent, and it wasn't right, so, I don't know that it was,
Intentional or.
yeah, no, and, and
But
they-
maybe not fully thought out either, so.
Right, so when those issues are brought up, the district was really responsive and did agree this isn't right and made the right decision to get new uniforms, so,
Good.
yeah.
Good.
Yeah, and girl uniforms, right, girls and boys are built differently, so that was the other thing too of.
There are tucks in
Girls
certain
can have,
places and no tucks in others.
Exactly, so that was important too, cause obviously with maturing, it's happening earlier and earlier, and so, younger and younger, so it's good to address those things, so, yeah.
Then there was I had another question in grades, and I don't think I printed out that piece of paper. Again, in the elementary, and it says that the letter grades scale are applicable to the TAG program students. There's nothing in there about how you evaluate students that are not in the TAG program, that are in elementary level. And I was just kind of curious about that.
It's a standards-based, report card.
So
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, so the report cards, most upper elementary students are gonna receive a letter grade, regardless of if they're in TAG or not. But what they are getting in addition to that is a scale that will indicate their progress. So it's a 4-point scale. 1 would be an area of significant concern, 2 would be kind of developing, 3 would be considered at grade level, 4 would be that you're exceeding expectations. So as the student progresses, the standards for each content area are on the grade or on the report card, and as the student progresses, the teacher is actually kind of assessing whether or not they're at a 2 versus a 3 versus a 4 throughout that school year.
So it sounds like maybe it's not in the handbook.
Well,
Last year was our first time of an elementary handbook. So this is just our second revision, if I remember right.
we had a handbook, but this is the most comprehensive kind of overhaul of it was last year. But I'm not able, even when I control F, I'm not finding where grades
We'll
are.
take a look
There's
and
a
we'll
thing
make
on
sure that that's
grades.
added if it's not, from that element. We'll make sure it's explicit for those grades.
Or just a little bit more fleshed out, because it just seemed like, you would find out in a teacher conference, kind of verbally, how your child was doing, but, whether your child you look for the report card,
Well, and
But
we
it
do have
sounds like
access
you're
to
not
the
getting
Power
it.
School too, so as a parent, you can go on to,
but if you're not, quote, grading, it was just a
From the
curiosity.
standards-based component.
Yeah. it's just
And on the report
curiosity.
cards, the standards are listed. Each standard is listed, so the parents have an understanding of what that standard is and how their student is progressing.
And it gives the parent and the teacher something more tangible to talk about.
Correct.
With their
Yep.
questions, which I think is useful. Then, of course, the last thing is looking at the district calendar. I notice there's no holidays on it, and yet we know that there are federally mandated holidays and there are reasons they select those dates. But we're just silent on them. And I think at some point, if we're doing social studies and asking money from the community to support the schools, we need to also address those holidays.
When I bring the calendar to you next year, we can have that conversation.
Okay?
Okay.
Because I'm thinking, I mean, we even mentioned Halloween,
Mm.
kind of in the day afterwards, but again, it's sort of in passing. And so it's whether things like Labor Day, Memorial Day, 4th of July, I think they should be important.
Okay.
Plus a few others.
We can have that conversation when calendar comes.
We'll have it again,
I
I'm
always bring it to
sure.
the board, just I don't have to have an approval, but I always bring it for information to get input beforehand.
I know, and I'm gonna sound like a broken record,
It's all right,
because I think it's important.
not a problem.
Okay, any other questions on handbooks?
You're good.
Okay, then we'll move on to advanced placement psychology textbooks for shared time. Kristen Moore.
Yep, so this is a request that we're really bringing forward just for transparency's sake. We, as you know, did a number of AP social studies adoptions throughout this year. Really, most of those were all renewals of current products where there had been an updated version or addition to the textbook. So AP Psychology, we actually have already purchased for both West and Central High School. We also provide textbooks for our shared time schools. And so St. Francis, about a month ago, indicated that they had need for the new edition of AP Psych, which then put us over the threshold, which is why we're bringing it forward to you today. So our request is really to pay for the 80 additional textbooks for St. Francis, which would be $16,078.32. But know that we also did purchase the same AP Psych textbooks for West and Central High School earlier this spring.
Can you just explain again how that works with St. Francis for the community that doesn't understand, maybe?
So because we have some of our staff that teaches at St. Francis or any of our other shared time schools, we're able to partially count those students in terms of our overall enrollment. And in turn, we provide the academic resources that would be necessary for the class. So technically, this AP class, while offered at St. Francis, is being taught by a TCAPS employee. We are able to then count some of those some of the FTE of the students, and that we in turn provide the resource. Did I summarize that well enough? Okay.
Yeah.
Any resources we provide to TCAPS in TCAPS schools, we still provide to the shared time TCAPS teachers teaching courses.
And we do it enough of sorry, this sounds like an income thing, but you get enough,
Return on the FTE?
yes,
Yes.
ma'am?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Yes. And so had this happened at the same time, we would have brought all of the requests at once. But it happened in this sort of, there was about a 3-month gap between when we went ahead and got the textbooks for Central and West to when St. Francis indicated they had a need. So that's why we're bringing it forward today.
Thank you.
I'm fine with that going straight to consent.
Okay, straight to consent, I think so too. I think we clarified here if anyone has any questions about, okay, so we'll move to consent, okay. Perfect, and you know what, sorry to back up a minute, but on the handbooks, we will also move those to consent. I don't think we recognize
we
that. Is that okay with the committee?
I just think that we need to encourage a close reading of the handbooks, and I don't think we've done that.
Okay,
I would just encourage that, and I don't know if that means you can do consent after just 30 seconds of saying that. But
okay,
Well, what I
because the
could do,
board, they
Beth,
keep
how about this,
saying-
in my board updates this week, I'll make sure to mention that's a request that was made during the committee discussion. We'll leave it in consent, but asking everybody to really take a close look in case there is something, and then if there was something at that point, we could then change it to a discussion item if people had an issue.
Good idea.
okay,
Okay.
that's a good idea. Okay, perfect. Okay. Okay, moving on to the next item, the Compass Strategic Plan update. Deferred, go ahead.
Yes, so always excited to talk about this. When this began in 2022, right, 2022 through 2025, it really gave us focus on vision, mission, values, as well as strategic plan goals, which also allowed us as central office to align to those goals as well as buildings. So you're gonna see a little bit of that information coming up later on in the school improvement plans, as well as kind of an overview of kind of where we are at in the Compass strategic plan. We are almost up to 2025, so it's hard to believe that we'll be redoing it again. But these have really served as really our North Star. And I don't need to probably review these with you because they're near and dear to your heart. But I did put in there the phases. So originally, when we started with the Compass strategic plan, we identified phases of work where we thought they would occur. In doing so, we also recognize that depending on where needs are, things might bubble up before other things. And so what we've done this time is at the end, given you an overview of kind of where we are at based on goals, each in particular goal, and how many action items or activities we have completed based on that. So you'll see that information coming up at the end. They were divided into phases based on priority, and then really divided into objectives that we wanted to attack and align action steps to for all those phases. This really is our comprehensive document, and I don't know, Kelly, if you can click on it to open that. But that gives you an overview of each and every strategic plan goal area as well as objectives, and then the metrics that are used to identify and analyze whether or not we're kind of on target or moving towards 100% completion on those goals. That is the ultimate goal for all our strategic plan goals and objectives, and you'll see where we're at as we go on. And if you wanna head back to the other.
Those little check boxes were complete.
Check boxes are complete, yes, yep, you got it. And then if you go back to the slideshow, go ahead, Kelly, and click on that. Because what this will allow you to do is take a look at our progress by goal. So if you hover over, because they're too small to see, right? But that's every single objective in the strategic plan, and if you hover over the top, it will give you an highlighted estimate of the percentage that we consider us to be complete by goal.
Wow.
So this really gives you kind of an overall analysis of where we either, and it doesn't mean we haven't been working on it in some cases it's just heavy lifting of the work. But in many cases, we've made significant progress towards that 100% goal completion. And I thought it would be helpful for you to kind of see where we're estimating our percentages to be. You will only see one blank on there, and that is down at, that goal with the ISD that you would have to go and basically work together to go out for, is it a bond, John, for money with the ISD? So that is the only area that you haven't seen.
It's a millage technically, yeah.
Yes, you got it, millage. And so that is one, that is, we knew, I think, the conversations around that, we knew that that was a difficult one to actually complete, so actually that is the only one we don't have progress on. So you can hover over each one of those goal areas and kind of see what our progress is based on objectives, and then you can also go back and refer to that comprehensive draft document that gives you each step. So, and our metrics that we have, who's involved, and it will also link to additional material that kind of is evidence of support of the work that has been done. We felt it was very important to make sure our work is visible and that people have access to see that work. And so if you go back to that main document again, thank you, Kelly. I'm just gonna give a shout out because Kyra's in the audience today. She actually helped figure all the percentages for each goal completion and helped us put this together for presentation. So, thank you, Kyra, amazing job.
It's great, that's a lot of work.
Yes, and then we're gonna kind of give you overview highlights of each plan and initiative, just as a reference to kind of the things that have been completed as we go through that.
So I'm gonna tackle this first one, which is the goal area 1A. That's all related to academic achievement. We have lots of different ways in which we're approaching academic achievement, but some of the major initiatives that you, I think, have heard about to date involve a consistent data review process across our entire elementary team. Our secondary teams are also working on that consistency of a data review process. That would be 3 times a year where we're pulling information, going through our data protocol, which we shared at the board study session for elementary. So that is definitely one of the major initiatives that we're taking to try to hit that goal related to academic achievement. We also have a really robust professional learning plan that both Heidi and I have been fortunate to co-chair a team of professionals that consists of principals, teachers, union representation, we have HR present, and the idea is really to flush out what is it that we need to be focused on related to that professional learning. Because as we have said many times over, we increase student achievement by increasing teacher expertise. So that professional learning plan is essential in helping us move the needle for achievement. And another major initiative really is related to those instructional coaches. So really what I think about in terms of instructional coaches is it's where the rubber hits the road. So if I'm a building administrator and I am really focusing on issues related to increasing the number of opportunities that students have to make their thinking visible and to respond. And we want to see a significant increase in the number of kids that are participating actively. That's a focus I have as a building person. A coach comes on in and says, okay, let me work with you, teacher A. Let's talk about it. Let's brainstorm together. How about if I come in and do some modeling? How about if I come in and just observe what's happening and provide you feedback? So our instructional coaches are really designed to increase the capacity and expertise of teachers at that tier 1 level. Not because they have any magical answers, but because we know that collaborating professionally and having a thinking partner and someone to bounce ideas off of is beneficial for all teachers. Even our most veteran expert teachers benefit from that. So those are some of the major initiatives that we're undertaking to try to really think about improving academic achievement.
Just one quick point,
Of course.
As we look at when we started this process in 2022 and now we're coming, to the end of, 2025 is right around the corner. I remember thinking about the strategic plan and then rolling it out and hearing teachers say, like, we don't want to chase the next shiny thing type of thing, we want it to really be a working strategic plan. And so I really feel like we listened to the teachers. They wanted this, instructional coaches and I hope that as we move into the 2025 and reevaluating that we don't, change some of those things, that we really keep that focused on what they're asking for so we can focus on that student achievement piece.
I think that, the key thing with the next rendition of the strategic plan is to not go, we've arrived,
Yeah.
And we've done that, and now on to others. I mean,
Yeah.
This is one, like, how do you not have this?
That's right.
As on continuous always.
Right.
And I think you will have some of those, but what you get in the next round is going to be, okay, we've made a lot of progress on some of these, and we have some other areas that we really need to really make a lot of progress on. So it's not that we're not going to still do stuff in that area, it's just not one that we're gonna constantly have at the front and center. And that may, some will stay on, some may drop off to bring others on. But that's that balance that the board has to go through in that process of a rendition.
Right.
And the goal areas are, very overarching. And I think the first phase really has been looking at making sure we have processes, procedures, and plans in place for each of these to support. Like, what does that long-term planning look like? So, again, plates in the air, how do we keep them all spinning? And then what is the next thing to make it better? So putting systems in place for sure, making sure we had those systems in place was ground level 1. And then moving forward, those things don't stop. they just keep going. So, continuing on with goal 1A and continuous improvement in academic achievement were a few major initiatives that were not only really teacher driven but also community driven. Like how are we putting curriculum mapping and transparency online? So developing access that's available for parents in the community to look at those one pagers. And we are, I would say, 90% complete with all of those, but they are posted online. So you'll have a few, if we have a new class come out, those will be added to that curriculum map online for transparency. The second area of improvement of academic achievement was that instructional rounds that in our study session for middle school, we spent quite a bit of time talking about. And the third area was that portrait of the graduate, about those 21st century learning objectives that we need to make sure our students are prepared for when they leave. So in the work that we've done with this, instructional rounds, as you know, we were able to implement, again, revive basically, because it started long before I got here, I think, and the gap in years was from 2015 until really this year. But the secondary schools were able to all have at least one instructional rounds visit this year. Next year, the goal is that all elementary schools will participate. So by the end of this year, every school in the district will be in the cycle of instructional rounds again for improvement for that instruction in the classroom for students and for teacher and then student achievement. Portrait of the graduate, that was work that we did again within the community where we brought stakeholders together. Students, teachers, staff, community members to look at what we valued as a community in our region for those portrait of the graduate characteristics. Next steps for that, again, because like we said, it's the first laying that foundation and then what the next steps are. So for that is really operationalizing that and looking at how those align into the curriculum. So you will see that secondary is highlighted each month like a student that's representing one of those characteristics of the portrait of the graduate. That's one way to highlight the importance of those skills. The other way is to actually have it embed and align and tie to those curricular expectations in the classroom. So you'll see more coming on that. And same thing with curriculum mapping. You'll see a few of those elective classes that were not yet in that full curriculum mapping and transparency added. This summer, we've done a tremendous amount of work on scope and sequence and making sure our resources are aligned and teachers have what they need before they start the beginning of the year. So that would wrap up objectives for goal 1A.
And I'm going to step in and talk about goal 1B. The goal area here is to develop and implement structures and systems of support to increase mental health, emotional health, and social well-being. So some major initiatives here are focusing on professional learning for all of our mental health team members across the district. The majority of our mental health team members have been trained, as well as our counselors, in trails, collaborative, proactive solutions, and restorative practices. And we will continue to add on and kind of pick up where we left off and train staff throughout the year this year as well. We are continuing to partner with local stakeholders, including physicians and mental health providers, to really collaborate and focus on kind of breaking down those barriers for our students and providing that collaborative care team approach. We've linked in our counselor trainings and who's been trained for what there. We don't have to. Oh.
Okay, sorry.
That's okay. This just shows who's all been trained and staff that need training. We'll continue to provide that throughout the year. We have successfully started to collaborate with law enforcement, Child Advocacy Center, including MSP here, and we will launch the Handle with Care. This is a Michigan initiative. It's a trauma-informed response to students that have experienced a significant or traumatic event. So we've been working with Noel Mogenberg has been a big part of this. So hopefully we'll be able to get this up and running at the beginning of the school year. So.
This is big, so let's say a kid has some type of tragic event, house on fire, burns down, domestic abuse or whatever, we will get an email that just gives the student's name, their date of birth, school, and it will say handle with care. And we know when that kid walks in the morning that something happened. And so that if they're sleeping, if they're this, that, we know something we don't know what it is, you know, we just know at that point, it's really important to have, and this is a really great thing for us to be able to bring to the district.
It really is, and we're gonna pilot it here at Traverse City Area Public Schools, and then law enforcement and the CAC are hoping to expand that throughout our region.
Yeah, I think they're dealing with other schools, the community representative for the state police. Right.
If you wanna go. And then we have really looked at and developed a behavior support flowchart. And this is really taking our positions within a building and creating consistency district-wide on how we respond to behaviors and looking at a tiered approach. So we have our specialists up there at the top, and those are our highly trained clinical staff, and we really want them to be focusing on more of that tier 2 proactive intervention. So how do we tier this to be able to support that work? And so we've kind of come up with this flow chart and have been working with our mental health team, and our administrators to kind of create this as a consistent response district-wide. Okay, and then if we can move on to.
So this is goal 1C, which is the goal that is really focusing on that addressing harassment, bullying, and creating a safe and inclusive environment for all. So some of the major initiatives related to that goal, we had a really good responding to bias and hate speech training that actually was given to all secondary staff. So started with all of our admin team, and then our admin team felt like it was so relevant and so important that we wanted to make sure that all of our secondary staff had been trained in how to respond to bias and how to respond specifically to hate speech. So that was something that took place this year. I'll skip the Superintendent Advisory Council, because Dr. Van Wagner might want to speak to that. But the other thing that we are really looking at doing is that integration of the Anishinaabe-Moan resource manual within our social studies content. So I would say our middle schools are the furthest along. They have a very set curriculum that they're able to pull and look at that resource manual and actually have specific lessons that they've identified. These are the resources that we think would be relevant to pull in at this particular time. So they have that quite flushed out. Our elementary team is transitioning. We had a retirement from our elementary social studies specialist. We just hired our new social studies specialist. He and I are meeting next week, and this will be on the docket. Will be to talk about, again, the integration of that resource manual in the context of our core curriculum. So, as we've always said, the core curriculum, the materials that we use, those are really the primary resource, but they aren't the exclusive resource. So we know that we're going to pull in more than just what Studies Weekly might have or a particular textbook might have. And this is an opportunity to really do that in a very thoughtful, strategic way. Kind of going along with that is the idea of really thinking about how do we capitalize on MLK Day and Indigenous Persons Day. So that's ongoing work that we're really in the process of, again, trying to come up with a really good plan. What we don't want to have is just sort of a one and done. Like, how do we build up to that October 14th date? How do we build up to MLK date and make sure that we are integrating the intent of those days in the curriculum?
There are two questions I have. One is, do you think the cell phone policy has played into any of the addressing bullying and making it more of a safe and inclusive environment?
I would say that it is absolutely of benefit. The cell phone policy absolutely does help decrease the amount of school-based bullying and harassment. What we also know is that kids also have access to their cell phone the minute they leave, right? And so that is obviously something that is well outside of our control to manage. But in terms of being in the school itself, not having to worry about somebody taking a picture of you that you don't like and posting it, not having to worry about having something recorded. All of that, I think, helps make our learning environments a much safer place for kids.
And I'm wondering if maybe that might be added to one of the
Oh.
accomplishments.
Okay, that's a great idea.
Just as a
Yeah,
thought.
yep.
And then the other thing is, and it's a little bit off the topic, but I was up at the Museum of the Ojibwa, I can't remember the whole title, but it's a museum in St. Ignace. And it looks like they have a travel exhibit, you know, and that may be something that would be very cool to
Yeah.
use. Because they address some areas, and they address them not as a black and white, but for instance, they do talk about boarding schools. And a lot of what happened with boarding schools is very objectionable. But then they also say that's where I learned to read and write. You know, so they say how the influence also can benefit. So it was very interesting. It's a good exhibit. And you come away feeling that there's a lot of perhaps hope, you know, as a result that we're not adversarial. And I thought in that respect it was a good exhibit.
You wanna speak to
Yeah.
the,
So the Superintendent Advisory Council, you know, I know that we had the chance to have board members a part of that as well. I think that was overwhelmingly a great opportunity for us to get feedback from students, and that is something we are planning on continuing. We are going to work, we had some of our COVID dollars, we were able to help support that with getting some of the facilitation and stuff off the ground and organized. But we have made a reach out to the ISD, and you might remember the facilitator that we had help us with the strategic plan. We're looking at her coming in and help facilitate this, so that we don't have a cost for it that we had. So we are right now working on trying to schedule that, and we'll bring some of the kids back, that wanna participate, that did again. We'll have an incoming group of freshmen that'll be a part of that, and continuing to be able to talk to them and get ideas and feedback on many of the strategic plan items and different things across the district. So really a good group of students to get feedback from.
You're a consultant.
That was the group that we used, that was a part of that we had for the COVID dollars.
I'm trying to think of her name. Wasn't it a her?
Marion.
Mary Ann from the intermediate school district.
Yes.
But KK Owen was the one that was from Huron Consulting that did our facilitation to help set up this student advisory group.
Oh, okay, got it.
Okay, and then as we continue to look at Goal 1C, some other major initiatives that we've been focused on is really vetting some social emotional learning program and looking at determining what program would be best for middle school. And then also how we can and when to integrate the bullying prevention lessons into our social emotional learning program second step, and using that K-5. And then determine scope of the inclusivity work. So we will be launching the second step bullying and prevention lessons this year. We've determined when those would best fit. We've worked with a rep from second step, and then had some admin buy-in, and we'll be doing that. And then we are continuing to look at social emotional learning for middle school. We've narrowed it down to 3, possibly 4. The 4th one's kind of hanging around, so we'll hopefully have that determined soon.
And I would also mention that when we started with the strategic plan, that was the very first year we had implemented a K-5 SEL program for students for basically learning. And then this addition to second step bullying is basically that second step we talked about, where there were gaps in learning for students in this area. So lots of progress in this area for sure.
And then moving on to Goal 1D, identifying and implementing strategies regarding student behavior to maximize learning. So some major initiatives here that we focus on is to develop and implement common metrics for data collection, develop and pilot restorative conferences as an alternative to discipline hearings and suspensions. And then, again, looking at that trauma-informed training for all of our support staff. So we worked really hard, and we're working with technology right now to kind of really work on making these documents as user-friendly as we can and condensing them a little bit. So we're hoping to launch this district-wide with some expectations behind each of these data collection matrix. So we will have our student support document, our support call document that we're looking at, and then some individual behavior tracking documents that we're hoping to gather some data. And this is great information for us to be able to provide to local physicians and stakeholders if we have a release of information to do that. And then looking at that district restorative conference team, we've developed an ad hoc team. We are working with them to kind of continue to refine that process. We've been in front of administrators, getting their buy-in, kind of talking to social workers and teachers throughout the district just to kind of continue on and get that a little bit more refined throughout this year.
One thing I'd like to mention there, when we talk about the next rendition of the strategic plan, you know, the bullying thing's really hard, and trying to find resources and things that, you know, other districts and others have addressed that. You know, we've not found a lot, and we're continuing to dig and dig. That would be one I would just, in the back of your mind for the board, consider as one of those that needs to be ongoing as we continue on. So far from arrived at that, but making baby steps and trying to sludge through and find resources such as the second step lessons, others that we can do with that.
It's by far the number one thing that I get comments about, so.
That kids are being bullied still.
And the last one we covered today in our area is strategic plan goal 1E. And that is to provide additional resources and supports for diverse learners so that all students can be successful. And I think I'll tap Tiffany after I'm done with kind of this list here, because there's additional work that she has been doing that should be highlighted as far as it relates to our students with 504 and special needs. But when we looked at this, we really kind of broke apart areas of support for our kids, right? You want to support students that are struggling as well as students that are excelling, and then also provide some really rich, authentic learning opportunities for students. And so on this list, I highlighted TC High and that revisioning process that we've gone through, which really came to the conclusion with one of the things that's like an offshoot of that is that development of that Compass Learning Center. 18 credit diploma, opportunities at NMC for credit for students at TC High, and just really diversifying opportunities for credit, really credit earning, and hopefully we hope to get to competency-based learning for those students. And so really investing in opportunities for students who not only have in-school experiences that reflect and really give them more opportunities, but also how are we incorporating outside opportunities with community partners? That's what you see the next one listed there, but at TC High, for sure, one of our focuses is how are we able to get them into the community with job shadow experiences, work experience, that actually deepen their understanding of themselves about where they want to go in the future. The other thing you see on there is that Munson partnership. This was started, Dr. Van Wagner met with Munson, and the idea was that we have lots of focus on STEM, but there are areas in the STEM field related to medical that we could probably address better, and we have a huge need for medical professionals in our area, right? That is overwhelmingly in our region and across the state and nation for that case. And so we've really met with Munson to develop really a strategic plan that really brings in not only elementary but middle school and high school. So at our elementary level, we will have each grade level will have a different book related to the medical profession or things they could be doing for exposure to that. The idea is that it would happen during healthcare week. In 5th grade, there'll be an off-site experience to NMC, because the idea there is that we would like to bring healthcare professionals together on NMC campus to highlight not only programs that are available and show that kind of that through line, not only from K-12 school to that NMC or community college or higher ed experience, then also through to those Munson opportunities. The goal with Munson really is to get to where we're able to offer opportunities for each student interested in that as really authentic experiences where they go into the hospital. And then really, the goal of employment within our region and getting them the tools that they need. Another area that we spent quite a bit of time on is we, in summer school, we are using the Amira Learning Platform to look at, and I'm very interested, I don't know if you've seen the data outcomes for that at all yet, but the idea is that it's able to listen to students and really process where they're at in their reading, and then give feedback. And what they tout to us is that it's that 0.4 effect size. So students who are using this program 30 minutes a week are seeing really great results in support of their individual learning. What this does, I guess you think about it, it uses AI to help support student learning to know where they're at and give them next steps. What it allows the teacher to do is to analyze more quickly. Think about it, they have 25 kids in a classroom. This really allows them to dig into each student learning and actually get an analysis of where they are at and really probe deeper in a quicker manner to be able to determine where additional supports are needed. The beauty of this is also students can use it at home, they can use it at school, so there's opportunities for support in that way. Another area of focus for opportunities for students and growth was with the addition of the sports medicine program at Central and West that will continue next year. We have an agreement with Grand Valley State that the students are able to earn direct credit through Grand Valley State and a progression program with them. So through NMC with Grand Valley. Looking forward to see where that heads. And then the last thing that we really invested in was the opportunity to bring in outside resources, Digital Promise, to help us support when we did that community listening tour and learned a lot about where our students felt we were at, where our parents felt we were at, and where our community stakeholders felt we were at. So lots of different opportunities for growth and learning for the vast spectrum of students, you know. We could also highlight our communities in the high schools, right? Giving students opportunities to come together in a close-knit community, taking a large school and bringing it down to a very small focus. So a lot of work in resources, support on all spectrum. Students who need and require additional support and students who are excelling, how are we making sure we're pushing them as well? And yeah, go ahead.
Is the Amira Learning like a program on their laptop?
It's a platform, yes. Yep. And then I'd like to turn it over to Tiffany because she has done a tremendous amount of work on the 504 and special ed side of just aligning those resources for special ed students.
So we've done a lot of work over the past couple of years in terms of supporting all of our learners who may struggle. And so really thinking about what can we put into place. And so obviously we have 504s all the way up through IEPs. And so when we're thinking about students who may need some extra support, we think about, okay, do they just need that accommodation plan or do they need specially designed instruction through an IEP? And when we think about the programs that we've put into place in our early childhood programs, we have our self-contained ECSE classrooms, but then we've also expanded to what we call 1755. And this year is the first year we're actually doing what we call play groups through 1755. So it's a student who may push into a GSRP classroom or a Head Start classroom. They get some service time. But then now we also have this other piece on the continuum where students can go into either Cortade or Silver Lake this fall and they can be part of a play group. So they may go out into the community, they may take part in maybe playground activities, and it's just an opportunity for some of our kids who don't need a full day classroom or a half day classroom, but just need a few hours here and there to have some exposure to the classroom setting and get the support that they need for their IEP. So super excited about that. And then obviously we've got some new curriculum coming into play for our students at the K-12 writing program. I know we've talked briefly about that, the step up to writing. So that's coming to fruition soon. And then we've got some math programs that are coming also for our K-5 folks. So lots of good things happening. It's exciting to see. So.
And like I said, just our work being able to be grounded in the strategic plan, you'll continue to see alignment as we go into the next segment where we talk about school improvement and how then buildings align to those goals.
That was a good segue. So we'll move right on to school improvement, the MyKIP update. School improvement
All
plan.
right, Kelly, can you go ahead and click on, and now, again, there's always that balance of providing too much information and enough for you to digest and opportunities for you to look at that later on. So for those of you who were here when we switched to the MyKIP platform for school improvement, they identified processes and procedures and really strategic process for us to go through when we're identifying our school improvement goals.
And again, this is our state mandated
Yeah.
platform.
State mandated platform, and so this is the process that each building actually goes through to identify really what their identified challenges are. They identify areas of inquiry, do a data discovery. You heard a lot about the data protocol that we use. They'll do an initial inventory assessment, They will do a gap analysis to look at where they were at in previous years. Have they observed growth and what their next steps might be? They do that data summary, like what are they gonna do now that they understand where their gaps are and what are their next steps based on the data that they see. They also conduct the why, right? What is the root cause analysis and how can we identify areas for next steps to then place those on our school improvement goal plans. And these are all now grounded, right? So MyKIP came in the year prior to the Compass adoption of the Compass strategic plan. But all has to be laced together or braided together, and you'll hear and you've heard a lot about the braiding of funds and how we're accessing at-risk funds and title funds and general funds to support learning. So, let's see, next area, this is just really goes through the protocols and processes that you do in identifying those areas of interest or inquiry. And really staff within their buildings work with their leadership's teams to identify what their goals are for the year. We look not only at academic goals, but non-academic goals and systems as well. So non-academic, you heard a lot of Misty and Kirsten talking about those non-academic goals we have. You think about, one thing we didn't mention, but if you think about all our district teams we have set up, health and well-being, all those different areas, climate and culture, those all play into all the pieces of the school improvement plan. And then looking at systems, what are the systems we have in place in all areas of our organization to make sure they're running efficiently, and how do we make improvements based on what our mission-based budget says that we need. When you're looking at the data discovery, you look at patterns. Buildings look at patterns, even business office, if they're looking at their strategic goal plans, they're looking at patterns of what they see, things they notice. Perception surveys, so a lot of what came into play are the perception surveys that they give within buildings, as well as what we receive back from the digital promise listening tour. They summarize their findings and then do an inventory of what they currently are already doing, and then look at work based on what is having success and what their next steps might be moving forward. So when you're thinking about the steps, you see the strategic plan is at the top. That's like our North Star. Then you look at the mission-based budget, like where are the needs that we have, and then we align our MyKIP strategic plan to those mission-based budget items and goals for buildings. Once we identify the gaps, then we put that whole entire story together, which is what I'm gonna give you one example of to see at the end here. By using that problem-solving protocol, got data, now what? Right, you've heard many demonstrations on us using that. This is another area where buildings use that to develop their school improvement plan. And this is kind of like the phases of that protocol for problem solving. And then at the very end, they articulate areas of potential growth and areas that need support within their building. And this is kind of like the process, what do the principals need to do by when? And kind of our process on the back end, once those are reviewed, then what are our next steps to go on from there? So I thought the most applicable, Kelly, could you click on, let's do West Middle School. So what does that look like in that overarching goal of those school improvement plans? Can you zoom out? And we'll see how far we can go for you to see, but this is the change that actually occurred after the strategic plan came into play. So on the far right-hand side, you'll see that not only have they identified the goals that they're going after for improvement in their building, but on the right-hand side, and if you go ahead and, this is kind of hard to navigate because it's small, if you zoom into that right-hand side again,
You want this side over here?
far right,
Yeah.
drag it over to the
There
right,
you go,
and
yeah.
zoom in a little bit more.
Let me just do it this way.
You can see it,
Yeah,
Can you see it?
enough? Okay.
strategic plan goal.
Yep, so as they identify their measures of success, right, so what are those SMART goals for them to accomplish whatever they set as their action steps and monitoring? They have already done a gap analysis, and the other thing that is primary to this is, are they aligned to the strategic plan? So you'll see not only the category, is it instructional, and go ahead and click on that pull down on
Right
the
here?
green bar. There you go. So they give categories. What area is it related to? Is it related to compliance? Is it related to technology? Identify that category. The next step in that plan in building that goal is selecting from that pull down the alignment to the strategic plan. So then if you click on the next box over, Kelly, you'll see they're able to select the alignment to the strategic plan goals. So they always know they're in alignment to what is the problem they're trying to solve? Is it in alignment with our strategic plan goals? And what are our next steps and objectives, right? So goal is that middle one, and then on the right-hand side, you see the objective alignment. So what objective is that aligned to? That's gonna actually take it to that narrow focus and target. So our work over the last few years has really been to making sure we are always in alignment with strategic plan goals, making sure our building goals and objectives are aligned to that as well, and then monitoring those pieces. So in each of the plans, you'll see action steps for monitoring, you'll see the gap analysis that they did, and you'll also see in those SMART goals, those measures of success. So on the bottom, you'll also see their previous years, because in some cases, they will select the same goal as the previous year, right? So one of the things about that changed when we moved to the MyKit plan is that it used to be identify your goals, and they were pretty generic. They would be 100% of students will be at this proficiency level by this time. But what the recognition is that, again, like your strategic plan development, we're keeping plates spinning, right? And you may need more than 2 years to develop and see improvement on a plan. You also may see that you identified an area of improvement and you went down a path and it's not working. And it's okay to actually reevaluate that and select a different course of action based on the data that you receive, which is very different from how the state used to operate. They used to operate, you put your plan in once a year. Now, if there's adjustments, we can change those throughout the year based on feedback and data that we received. So the state is headed in the right direction. The platform is not fun to use, but the idea in theory is very good. And when we're looking at how it aligns to our strategic plan and how buildings are able to do that, it really has created a comprehensive focus of and snapshot of each of our buildings. So that is super helpful for us when we're looking at even planning at-risk Title II funds in areas like that to support buildings. They've also identified where those funding and financial supports would come from. So you'll see that there's braided funding structure in there. Some are coming from the district, some are coming from building at-risk funds. That allows us to get that full snapshot of where they're allocating funds and where we have additional needs to support. So if you go to the very bottom, the last thing I'll touch on, scroll all the way down, yep, is, and she doesn't happen to have any additional needs listed right now, but on the bottom of each of their sheets, if they had an additional need or priority, those are placed at the bottom of the sheet, and then we look at those as a team to identify overall district-wide. Are we seeing patterns? Is everyone asking for additional social worker? Are they asking for additional aid support? What is the need within the building? We analyze that, so if additional funds become available, then we're able to look at prioritizing those and allocate. Especially if we see a pattern, then we see it's not just one building asking. This might be a district need versus just a single building need.
Heidi, how often is this, like, how often is Mrs. Studeman updating and reviewing?
Once a year.
Once a year,
Once a
okay,
year.
and then how often, like you kept referencing the admin team reviewing and looking, like how often are you guys accessing this document?
So then whenever we do our strategic plan reviews, all that stuff comes into play. So when we're talking about the strategic plan goals, that's why they're aligned to that. So I probably look at those, realistically myself, I go through probably 3 times a year and look at those. So look at kind of like, and usually they're just conversations with principals, like how is it going, you allocated, what your next steps might be, or they may say they have an additional need.
Okay.
So really using this as a reflection, hoping that it's not used as compliance, but used as a living, breathing document, which is a shift from before.
Okay,
And
that was my next
that's a
question.
hard thing to do,
Okay.
you know?
Yeah, especially from
Yeah.
trying to comply with the state.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the building principal is responsible for updating that document.
Yes, the building principal is with their team. So their team will come together, and typically it's their leadership team would come together. I don't know, what did you do at Blair at elementary? I know secondary better than elementary.
Yeah, at the elementary level, it would be primarily the building principal that's filling that out and then getting input from that leadership team or what we used to call our BN team, our building network team. So, but it's a big document, it's a meaty document, it takes a while to get through, and so it's really one of those things that I think as a building principal, it sort of forces you to pause and be really reflective. And certainly that last page of like, here are some of the outstanding things that you still need to address, that's something that gets revisited quite a bit,
Yeah.
as you can imagine, like,
Mhm.
yep, we still have this issue that we'd like to,
Right.
usually it's always about resources at
Yeah.
that point.
And the other thing we really try, because really our focus is on building leadership capacity too, right? So one of the areas that we added early on was identifying the person who's leading the work within the building. So initially, principals take all that ownership on. So how are we, if it happens to be your health and well-being team, who are the actual identified leaders of that group? And it doesn't have to be the principal. Certainly the principal has oversight, but how are we building capacity and leadership to offer more initiatives for people to lead within the building? And it's just, you get so much more done if you're using that distributive leadership model. So,
Sure.
yeah, so I would say some of it is compliance, but the other part is allowing principals time to be reflective and analyzing like what their next steps might be, so. And so each of those are their individual building school improvement plans, which then tie to the overall strategic plan for us. And that's what I really submit to my KIP. Not only these pieces, but just what is our overall strategic plan goals. And that's why we felt aligning those within these MyKIP building plans were so critical.
Back here,
Hey,
or do you want?
questions on that?
Do you guys have any questions? That's a lot of information.
Reminds me
No,
of
no,
a
no.
747 and how you make course corrections when you're flying, as opposed to when you're flying a small plane
Very
and
much
making them much
Yeah.
quicker.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
And
It's a big
hopefully they don't all
difference
choose the
between the two.
parachute, right?
No, don't take a
Right,
parachute in small planes unless it's an aerobatic plane.
That's right, that's right.
Okay.
Well, that was good. I know that's a lot of work and
Yeah, the principals do a great job. It is, it's a lot of work, but it really helps us in the district to look at the overall picture.
Okay, so we'll move on to informational items. First item is the 23-24 data review. So Heidi?
Okay, and Kelly, if you wanna click on this as well, I'll just give you some brief highlights here. Oh, wait, no, I'm sorry. Are we out of order? Yeah, there we go. And so we had a great year for our AP testing. We had, let me give you the totals here. So at Central, we had 369 students test for AP exams. Number of exams that were completed were 750. And students that scored with a 3 or better were 332 students. And a total students of 3 or better was 89.97% at Central. So this, just to orient you to this again, Kelly, if you go to the top and you click on school name, this is overall district, so our overall district average is 3.7. But if I click on, let's say, West only, click on the only button to the right.
Oh, sorry.
There you go. This will data dig for you down by school. So if you give it a couple seconds, it will regenerate, and then you can actually even dig down by like grade level, number of students per grade level that took it, the discipline, was it in math and computer science, was it science, what area was it in. It allows you to automatically see those updates on average scores by building as well as by district if you clear all that information. On the west side, we had 448 total AP students taking exams, and the number of exams that they took were 813 exams. And 3 or better, 377 students. So that was 84.15% of students scoring a 3 or better, which we know that a 3 or better many times will give you credit in those college courses. And then if you go to page 2, this is interesting. You'll probably spend, maybe not, maybe it's just me, but a little bit of time digging into like the number of, I know you're laughing, Flanoy's like, yeah, I'm not looking at this. So
Right now.
there's something for everybody, right? So scroll to the top, go ahead and scroll to the top. And the darker blue indicates the higher scoring, right? And on the right-hand side, you'll see the record numbers. So the darker that teal color, the more students took the test, right? So that gives you a little bit of understanding too. You could have had one student take it and get a 5 and the average score be 5. So if you go ahead at the top and click on score, it actually sorts those from the highest to the lowest. So you can see where did we see some of the highest scores in the district coming from. You see pre-calculus is at the top, and you'll also see that 76 students, is it 76? Yes. 76 students was a record count of the number of students that took it. And if you scroll down further, you'll see the US government is a very popular one. It gives your average score, I think that's the one that was taken the most, and we had 125 students take that.
And is
So-
this still West?
This is still
That's just
west, yep,
yeah.
so if you scroll to the top, Kelly, if you go to the very top and see where it says school name, if you go over and you click on central and click only on the right, you're able to kind of look at those, that information by school. It's just thinking it will take a little bit of time. And then you'll be able to do the same thing. You can sort based on score and look at the number of students that took the test. On that bottom graphic there, it gives you the discipline. So was it English, was it science, was it history and social studies, what that average score was by discipline as well. So these are all things we look at each year. Not only that, but we also look at like progression from year to year. So if you click on that last page, that untitled page on the left-hand side, you'll also see the number of students that took the AP test by year. So you'll see we're increasing slightly each year. And then you'll also see those scores of the number of students that took the test and what their average score was. So again, this is just another opportunity for students to be able to earn college credit prior to leaving high school, and allows us to advance the curriculum for students who are ready for it. And our goal, right, is to push kids as far as they can go and not hold anybody back. So this is one opportunity to engage students who, in a lot of cases, may not have considered an AP class, and somebody, talk to them about, is this a good opportunity for you to accelerate in math or science before you go to college? So, yes.
Couple questions.
Yeah.
Are all those classes taught in-house or are those taught in-line? Or
I would
through
say
ASU.
99% of them are taught in-house, but you will have some students reported on here that, like, I think you see a Chinese language course that they did not take the course, but they tested. So you'll see like one person, but anytime you see a significant number of students, that means it's an in-house class. I think we only have one or just a few tests that are taken by students who, cause any kid can test, you don't have to actually take the class, so.
And is there anything where you can ask the kids, were you able to actually count that into your college
Yes.
curriculum hours? Do you,
Yes,
do you have
depends, yeah.
a number that?
Depends on the school.
right.
Sure, they like this, the 4 and the 5 is what they,
But some of
It
the
depends on the school,
Yeah, depends
like
on the
Michigan
school.
State will take a 3, where Michigan will only take a 4, like it on a certain course,
yeah.
so
And it depends on the course.
I think North Carolina takes it too.
Oh my
I don't think so.
Yeah,
But they might,
yeah.
they might in certain study programs,
maybe, you know.
education,
Yeah, maybe.
Oh boy.
Yeah, it depends on school and course and all of that with their,
Yes,
yeah.
and the kids know that ahead of time.
Yeah.
So if they think they're going to U of M, they will know exactly the courses with their counselors that at that moment in time,
Mm-hmm.
so that you can begin to go into a higher level.
you got it.
Cause
And-
Yeah,
when you take your
Yeah.
AP tests, they ask you where you wanna send your test scores to. So, and of course,
That's
it doesn't mean
true.
you have to go to those 5, it just means that your scores are automatically sent to those schools.
right.
And then, you'll know if they
Sort of
count
like
or
when
they
you
don't count.
take your ACT or your
Yeah.
SAT.
And it's not only math and science, you'll see, art courses in there, you'll see computer science courses. They do have some music courses, I believe, so
Yeah.
for AP as well, so.
Yeah.
It's not just math and science, which, math, science, ELA, which and history, the 4 core, which is what people typically understand. It's quite broad in their areas of options for students, so.
And as Heidi was talking about the amount of tests that are taken at both sites, I would just like to shout out the assistant principals who do that work. It is a lot of organization, it is a lot of time that those principals are putting together to make sure
Tiffany,
that
are you
we're.
speaking from past experience?
Maybe. And I know that it's a huge undertaking.
trauma.
It's a huge undertaking.
That's when we have to talk to this one about trauma, right? I was there too, but, so overall, Kelly, if you go back to page 1, just an outstanding year for our students. We saw, and one thing to note is last year, our average score was 3.53 across the district, this year it's 3.7. So, seem to be trending in the right direction, offering more classes and more opportunities. And they're not a replacement, that's the good thing. So like, for example, if a kid were taking, like advanced biology or advanced chemistry, right? They turn it into an AP class and they have an opportunity to take the AP test. So, not any additional coursework, just making sure we're in alignment with our AP courses. So, super proud of the work that the principals and the teachers are doing within the building. Outstanding work on this overall and lovely to see the results.
I work with Maria Chargo at
Yes.
Maudie, and I know she tutors a lot of those calculus and pre-calculus students, so I took a picture of that, she'll run her screen very well.
She's amazing.
She is amazing.
She is an amazing educator for sure, and we have so many. We're very lucky at TCAPS.
She's also good at the table side at Maudie too. She's excellent, she can upsell.
I feel like I would buy from her. All right. So any questions on AP? No. Great.
Can I get into this?
Yes.
Mhm.
Yep. Everybody has access.
Have a way at it.
Well, no, I know you want a one-on-one session with me on.
Yeah, we'll get that
Yeah,
scheduled
yeah.
as soon as we break here.
Yes. Okay, next section is bullying and harassment. And we have linked in, I don't know if you guys want me to cover this or do you wanna talk about this at all?
Just that this is our process that we've had in place for some time now, related to how we respond to any reports of bullying or harassment. So that is something that I think as a district, we've really worked hard on coming up with a response that is clear, it's outlined. I know that Tiffany spent a lot of time working on just having like a Google form that instantly would notify Connie Taylor if there was any kind of title issues. So basically when we have report of bullying and harassment, the administrators kick into this form, they begin to do that investigation. It then will flag Connie if it's a Title IX issue.
The nice thing is it's not just Connie that's flagged, it comes to myself, Kelly, as well as HR, so in the event that somebody's out for a day, it doesn't get a lag.
So if you go back to the original slide, that's basically that kind of form that we're filling out. We also have that flow chart that actually talks through to principals, just even discerning. Bullying is tricky because bullying in its truest form is representing a disproportionate power and balance of power. So for a bullying event to take place, you would have an imbalance of power between a student or a group of students and another student. Oftentimes, what's more likely to be the case, it is a circular issue where kids are kind of dishing it out and receiving it all at the same time. You know, yeah, I said that because he said that. And it becomes really challenging to kind of pull out. Like, what we know is that there's a conflict, that there are kids that are treating one another poorly, that we need to address and try to provide some instruction in how to perhaps repair some of that harm. But it is not as clear usually as like those after-school specials where, you know, the big kid shoves the little kid down and says, give me your lunch money, right? So this flow chart is really designed to help that administrator kind of tease out, when is this something that we need to kick into that more formal process, and when is this a dispute between two kids? I will say that when in doubt, we err on the side of saying it's a bullying event. So if it's a little bit gray, if we're not quite sure, we're going to kick into that idea of, we're going to at least run the bases with this. We're going to make sure that we've covered all that we need to ensure that it's been thoroughly investigated. But a lot of times when a kid comes in and says, I'm being bullied, what they mean is that they're in conflict. They're having a problem with another kid. And it takes a little bit of time to kind of tease that out.
Okay. Then we report out on the data that we see with this each year. And if you remember, last year was really last year was the first year we were using that form, and so we didn't start at the beginning either. I think it was mid-year with the, is that right, mid-year?
November.
And so our hypothesis was that we were gonna see increase in reporting, but we didn't know what that would come as far as outcomes for whether or not it was actually bullying and harassment. So that is what we actually see here. So you'll see the dark blue line is 21-22, then 22-23 is that blue line, and then the 23-24, that teal color, is this year. And so we did see an increase, and this is by gender. We broke it down by gender, race, and supports that students have. So you'll see we saw an increase in target demographics for male, female, not in the non-binary, and then by race, increase by Caucasian, decrease in Asian, increase in Black, decrease in, well, actually it maintained in Hispanic, and increased by 1 in Native American. And then we also know it's important to look at supports, like, is a student receiving do they have a 504 plan, IEP services, are they English language learner, is any of that coming into play? And then we also look at total number of reported incidents. So those are all data points that we look at to see if we have some particular areas that we have identified a need to look at. So for example, I would say IEPs, if you look at IEPs for supports, there were 35 this year compared to 14 the previous year. This is the surface level, remember, then you dig down into each of those reports to find out like what Kirsten was saying. Was it identified as an actual bullying and harassment? These are only the ones that everything that was reported. That's
Within TCAPS.
Yeah, within TCAPS.
Can I just ask, are we looking at, when we see this, are we looking at the reports that were based on race, reports that were based on gender? Like, is that, or are we saying that,
Just demographic
Yes.
so
information.
53
Yes.
females
Yes,
Were-
did,
correct.
okay,
Yes.
got it.
And the important thing I think that she highlighted here again is, doesn't mean it's increased things, it's that we put a reporting system in place and we're getting a lot more people to document these things than we've had before. That's what we believe this chart really shows. You know, there are things before that maybe just we didn't document, weren't reported, and now I think that we're really trying hard to make sure that we have an accountability system there for reporting data on it that we can analyze, and that's what this chart is showing based on demographic information.
Yes, avenue to support students, what comes next, and then,
It was interesting that male reports
Yeah.
are higher than the female.
yes. I would have guessed, yeah, I would probably have guessed it was the opposite as well. And then this is broken down by comparison, bullying elementary and secondary. So you see reported incidents, definitely an increase, confirmed incidents was a little bit of an increase. And total targets, so, one of the things you're thinking about, you notice that on the left-hand side, total incidents reported were 45, total targets were 46, that means that an additional student, like 2 students were targeted at once in one incident, that's what that means. So, yeah,
Question.
Mhm.
Is it, could you have one kid doing 10 instances and then
Yes.
those would all be so really
Yes.
the increase in males could be 1 or 2 kids as
That are just
opposed to,
consistent, that is correct.
yep,
yeah.
And that's where it's important you dig into this, it doesn't just tell the whole story from
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
aspect.
And can you break it down by school?
by school, by student, yes, right down to, number of students that were targeted, by school, by incident, all those other pieces, yeah. You can get quite, and we have to, I mean, that's what we do, even in buildings. That's where it starts, right? They get that report, they complete it, they have those conversations with students and they have to determine whether or not it was a bullying and harassment incident or not. So a lot more reported, which is good for us, right? We know that they're asking the questions. Does take time, but then, you know, what does that look like on the back end? So, more confirmed than last year for bullying at elementary, less confirmed incidents, at secondary that you see there. And then this next slide is that overall, comparison of bullying and harassment over the years. So incidents reported, confirmed as bullying, and then total targets that you see there.
21, 22, were we face to face all of that year?
No.
We were, yes, we were.
2021 was.
Yes. 21, 22, we were face to face all
The
year.
whole year?
whole year?
Feels like so long ago, right?
I know.
I'm sure 21, 22 we were, right?
I
Yeah.
thought we were partial.
First couple months I thought were remote, no,
19, 20,
all blurred
See, we've
together.
tried to force it out of memory, is that
Right?
like chronic
Yeah.
again? Yeah, I don't
yeah,
know.
maybe we were.
I was thinking we were full year, face to face.
2021, the first week, we were virtual.
Right, but 21, 22
21,
is-
22, we were fully in
Well,
school.
Yes,
okay.
that's what I thought.
Yep.
Okay.
Alright.
Because 2021 was my first year, and we started off virtual.
So this is the 23-24 overall suspension and expulsion data. So this isn't bullying and harassment, we're moving into suspension and expulsion data. And some of the things we see here is that you see that trend from 21, 22, 22, 23, 23, 24. So we had an uptick last year and in both cases, a reduction this year. So I think we have invested a significant amount in what Misty was talking about earlier, like what does restorative conferencing look like? How are we supporting students in different ways so we are not going to suspension and expulsion as the option, as the go-to, right? How are we putting supports in place so we don't get to that place?
Mental health.
Yep.
Focus was some.
Mental health, healthcare in general, focus, so we've spent a lot of time looking at the different areas of support for students. So this is good for us, what we're seeing this year for suspension and expulsion data. And then this is your 3-year suspension and expulsion data. And you'll see the number of total disciplinary hearings, feeling very proud of this, right? In 21, 22, we were at 44 in a year. remembering that when we came back from COVID, it was a lot of re-entry into school, and it was, this is, I think, one of the effects that we saw there. But this year down to 17, which is great, and a number of students over 10-day suspension, which is a significant amount of time out of school, way down from 21, 22, from 28 to 12, so that's all good news. 60-day suspensions were right at level as last year, but down from 21, 22 again. And permanent expulsions were at 0 this year, which makes you feel good about making sure we're trying to meet the needs of kids and getting them what you need, and our focus is on the teaching and learning and keeping them in school versus shutting the door. So super excited about this 3-year comparison data for us on this. That's super rewarding to see this trend.
So this, we had hearings this year. but
Those are
none of them-
return to school after hearing, the second one.
None of them were,
None of them from the
Decided
hearing
to-
went right back to school. Yep. And that is the end of the bullying and harassment and suspension and expulsion data review.
Disciplines included in that,
Yes.
that was all of
Yep.
the, okay, perfect.
So really good news, super downward trend,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah. It'll-
And looking at different things, I think restorative circles, I mean, a lot of things, Misty and her
Yeah.
team's working on all those things that we're trying to do to keep kids in school, yet, you know, we have to enforce, you know, what we need to do as expectations, so always a give and take on that element, but definitely a positive number to keep kids in school.
It'll be interesting to see, just thinking about the state budget and how that's gonna impact our mental health,
Yeah.
dollars and support, and to see, and, it'll be a few years before it's, hopefully won't be reflective in
Right.
a data review, but,
Right.
yeah,
Yes, it will be.
And I
so,
think that's really important though, that we continue to collaborate with our community and really partner with them to increase, like take down those barriers and increase supports within the community for our students and helping them get access.
And that goes back to those gap analyses of, okay, these are the systems we put in place, is it having impact?
right,
And again, tied to the strategic plan. So I mean, I feel very positive about the data we have this year. We're doing more reporting, which is good for kids, right? And also making sure we're keeping kids in school when we can.
good stuff. Well, thank you for that, good review on all of that data, so thanks, I know it's a lot of work, so, and then, we'll move into celebrations and successes, so,
kudos to Ginger and Katie for working hard on the Sunshine Bus.
So awesome.
It's so amazing, the amount of food and books and basic needs that are being distributed in our community. So knowing we just have it's crazy to think, but only 6 more weeks until we're back in it. But know that they are out there, the schedule is out to help support our community. So kudos to their team.
It just exudes happiness.
Yes.
The Sunshine Bus, I mean, the name itself.
yeah.
So.
I'll have this one.
Yeah.
Thanks to TVA Credit Union yesterday, we were supposed to have a check, but because of the gas leak, we had to reschedule. They're doing a lot of great things for us, but one thing here is they're hosting a back-to-school supply drive benefiting our student support network. Donations are accepted through September 6th. You can find supply drop-off locations at both the TBA Credit Union branches. And for more information, they can view the Amazon wish list for the supply drive. They can visit https://tbacu .info/TCAPS /supply/drive. And that link will be on our committee site as well.
Do you think we could ask Ginger to get a social media post on that?
We will.
Just, okay, I'm sure she's done it, but maybe another reminder.
It already has been actually, but I will double check.
Okay. good to just push out to the community. A lot of people ask, what can I do, where can I donate? This is a great thing,
I think she has, but I meet with her today, I'll mention it.
that'd be awesome,
Yep.
okay.
Okay,
Alright, well, good, well, anything else anyone wants to add? Okay, well, good work, so our next curriculum, committee meeting will be in this room Tuesday, August 27th at 8:30, and with that, meeting's adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.